identity access management. She did mention that identity access management is all about you giving authorization to whom to authorize individuals, giving authorization to authorize individuals. And so it's understand for you to it's important to understand the scope to implement an identity access management. When we start looking at the scope, what will be the scope when you start thinking of identity management, identity access management? What should come to your mind? What will be the scope? How should I implement identity access management that will cover my entire organization? So with the scope now, you're looking at the resources, you're looking at the different resources, your different systems, you're making sure that you implement IAM to the different systems you have in all the systems you have in your organizations, because you don't want to implement in some systems and there is a gap in another. You're trying to have that enterprise implementation of IAM. And you're also looking at users, because you're also looking at users. If you want to implement, like, let's say, a multi-factor authentication, that's MFA, which is an example of identities, a solution that can be used for identity access management. You want to look at how many users am I implementing this? And again, you want to implement to all your users. So you're looking at your resources, you're implementing on your resources. You don't want to implement on your resources and you say, oh, let me leave my users, because attackers now want to use they want to use every loophole. So you're looking at your resources, your systems, you're looking at your users, you're looking at the devices now. You're looking at the devices where only authorized devices are able to access your network, where you have systems in place that identifies if an unauthorized person tries to get into if an unauthorized device. So now it's not only about authorized persons, but you're also looking at devices, which device do have access to my system. So you're able to identify that with the systems, with the solutions you have in place. So it's important to have identity access management implemented in all your devices, and also your applications. One of the trending, some of the trending attacks we're seeing today is in the area of sometimes API, which API secure. That is why I actually added API into this program, because it's so now you have to implement identity access management at the application level. So applications interact with each others. Applications are like different pieces. Like if you look at a software, there are different pieces, different services, micro services within that application, and they do interact with each other. So you want to implement identity access management at your application level, such that if these applications are interacting with each other, you should have some level of comfort that maybe a vulnerability in one piece should not be transferred to another piece. Or if an attacker succeeds to attack one piece of your application, it should not there shouldn't be maybe a lateral movement to the other piece of the application. So that will be the scope. You're looking at the resources, you're looking at your user, you're looking at your devices, you're looking at your application. So this should be an enterprise approach in implementing IAM. And lastly, looking at there are like three main principles when it comes to identity access management. They did mention least privilege. So there are three main principles. We have least privilege principle. We have the separation of duty. Then we have the zero trust. So when implementing, considering the scope you are looking at, so when you go ahead and implementing, when you're trying to implement and also managing, you should be able to ensure that these principles are taken into consideration. There should be least privilege, where only users are given just the level of privilege they need to do their work. You don't give them too much privilege. That's to say, if an individual is supposed to create user accounts, you don't give them a privilege that is meant to create user accounts and also delete user accounts. You give them only the privileges that they need to perform their work. Then, yes, then we have separation of duty. That is a principle in implementing IAM, separation of duty, because it's important. It's very important that there is separation of duty. That's to say, you want to reduce your attack
Yes.
surface. You want to reduce your attack surface. That's to say, if an attacker wants to pass maybe through business email compromise, to get into your system, maybe if there is one individual that takes care of that creates invoices, there should be another individual that maybe approves those invoices. So if an attacker succeeds to get the person who creates the invoice, he will still have more work to do to attack the person that approves those invoices. So you want to have separation of duty. And the one last one, which is zero trust. Zero trust is talked about a lot today because in the past we have mainly a kind of perimeter-based security. Perimeter-based security is a kind of security where it's based off you having a confinement. You say, oh, anyone who is within my system is trusted, and anyone who is outside of my system is not trusted. But as time goes on, we've noticed that there are also insider threats. There are individuals, maybe disgruntled employees. There are individuals who are not satisfied with the way the organization is treating them. They are within your organization. So you cannot have a security where you trust people within, and you completely trust people within, and people outside you don't trust. So now you need to have a zero. One of the principles is to have a zero trust. It's a zero trust in principle that says you trust someone, but you must verify. You trust your employees for what they are doing. You trust that they are there to protect your organizations, but you must verify to validate that trust. So that this is you've looked at the scope, we've looked at the principles, the scope. What we are looking at with the scope, we look at the principles. It's important that you take note of this. But again, these are things we're going to maybe come back to them because they are very important as a cybersecurity person. Okay. Thank you. So we might not ask this group questions. So except you have maybe a very serious, well, every question is serious, but I don't know. Do you have anything serious? Any question? Okay. You have any question?
I think it's
Okay.
better for us to continue with the class because if you start asking questions, because we have a lot of questions. Myself, I do, but I think
Okay.
it's better like to continue with the class and then we'll come back on this maybe tomorrow or another day. The time
Okay.
for us when I will be in the group to work with them and then
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
have
That's
more knowledge about this. Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Anthony. That's correct. So okay. So Esli, Madam Esli, do you want to take over the class?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay, multiple participants can share simultaneously. Okay. Okay, yeah, you can go ahead to share your screen if you want to. I don't know. You have
Yeah, we don't have that much time left, but
please just to call attention, we might extend a little today. Please for sure we did mention 2 hours is not really sufficient because we have a lot to please, if we can accommodate us to extend maybe for another 30 minutes, that would be great.
just confirm if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Please, Mama, I'm in class. When I'm done, I'll talk about it.
Can you
Okay.
guys mute if you're not doing anything
Oh, I'm sorry.
so we can make our class organized? Yeah, so today we'll start talking about cryptography. It's one of those interesting topics. So I just want to take the opportunity to welcome you all to the amazing and fascinating world of cryptography. So what are we going to be doing there? We're going to check the goal of cryptography. We're going to check the cryptographic concepts, cryptographic mathematics, as well as ciphers. So this cryptography is the art of keeping secrets. So cryptography is just like, as I said, is the art of keeping secrets and making sure they don't fall into the wrong hands. I know some people find cryptography as a very difficult topic, but that's why we're here today. We're going to make it like easy. We're going to break it down for everyone to understand. Even if you didn't enjoy maths or you skip like a few maths classes, I assure you, don't worry. We're going to have like some fun with this topic. So just kind of put your pens together and books, because we're going to have an adventure in the world of cryptography. We'll have to do this together, step by step, and make sure you follow along because we're going to be practicing together. Don't skip any step. I know we may get, though we're making it as easy for you all to understand, we may still get a bit detailed in explanations, but that's only to make things easier for those of you who would want to take like some top certifications, for example, CISSP, and so on. So sit back, relax, get ready. Let's explore the world of cryptography. And one thing before I start, I would encourage you all to always put your questions on the chat. So when like an instructor is taking a course, you can take the questions, or any of the instructors that is checking like maybe the chat can always respond to some questions that don't need the presenter. Okay, so what is cryptography? Cryptography is a practice of making information sacred and keeping it safe from others who are not supposed to see it. How do we do this? It is done by using mathematical algorithms and techniques to be able to transform plain text into ciphertext. In other words, when we talk about like cryptography, it just involves scrambling information and making it unreadable to anyone who doesn't have that secret key to unscramble it. Don't bother about the terms that you don't understand. We're gonna be defining the terms as we go ahead. So someone may be wondering like, why do we need cryptography? Well, the answer is like simple. We need cryptography to be able to protect our sensitive information from potential security threats and so on. When we go ahead, we'll see more about the goal of cryptography in the slides ahead. You know, nowadays, cryptography is used in a variety of applications such as secure communication, digital signatures, data protection, as well as access control. We've talked a lot about access control. And what's the main goal? The main goal is to ensure that there is confidentiality, there is integrity, and there is authenticity of information and data. We keep talking about this confidentiality, integrity, availability. Here we're talking about authenticity of the information and data. For example, just think about your bank account details, your passwords, your personal messages. you really don't want anyone else to have access to this information. That's where cryptography comes in handy. It allows us to protect our sensitive information so that it can only be available to those intended recipients. So it shouldn't be available to those attackers, to anybody who is not supposed to have access to it. So as I mentioned, we'll be looking more about the goal of cryptography. We've defined cryptography multiple times, and still, what is that cryptography? Is the science of using codes and ciphers to protect our confidentiality, to protect our integrity, and to protect the authenticity of data. In a modern and digital age where, sensitive information is being transmitted across like networks, our information is stored in multiple devices. That is where cryptography comes in as a very essential tool. And one of the primary goals of cryptography is confidentiality. This goal ensures that only authorized individuals have access to sensitive information. So cryptography therefore achieves this through the use of encryption. We've mentioned encryption multiple times. So cryptography achieves this through the use of encryption, where plain text data is converted into ciphertext that can only be decrypted by intended recipients. So when we talk about encryption, you have to take note when we talk about we have symmetric, we have asymmetric. And there are two methods, like there are two common methods of achieving this confidentiality in cryptography. It's through that symmetric and asymmetric cryptography. So how does symmetric cryptography work? It uses only one key. It uses a single key for both encryption and decryption, while asymmetric cryptography uses two keys. That is, it has a public key for encryption and then a private key for decryption. And it's very important with this to note that there are three states of data. We've talked about the states of data before, but when we talk about cryptography, it is important to know that there are three states of data that cryptography can protect. And what are those states? We have data at rest, we have data in motion, we have data in use. And data at rest just refers to the data that is stored on a device, while data in motion refers to the data that is being transmitted across the network. And data in use just refers to the data that is being processed by a device or an application. Then another goal of cryptography is to ensure integrity. This ensures that our data has not been tampered with or modified in transit. And cryptography achieves this goal through the use of message authentication codes. That's where our own MAC comes in, MAC. Cryptography achieves this, like to ensure that there's integrity through the use of MACs and digital signatures. Then we also have authentication as one of the goals of cryptography. What is authentication? We've talked about this multiple times. It is the process of verifying the identity of an individual or a device. It's not just an individual that you verify, you also verify the identity of a device. And how does cryptography achieve this? Cryptography achieves authentication through the use of digital certificates and digital signatures. We're going to see all this as we go ahead. And the last goal of cryptography is non-repudiation. So non-repudiation is one of those goals that cryptography wants to achieve. It uses this goal and what is non-repudiation? Non-repudiation prevents individuals from denying they sent or received a message. They have to confirm. So non-repudiation makes sure that once you receive a message, there's no way you can deny it. So how does cryptography go ahead to achieve this goal? Cryptography achieves the goal of non-repudiation through the use of digital signatures as well. So here we can see the goals of cryptography and how cryptography goes ahead to achieve those goals. We can summarize the goals by saying that cryptography is aimed at protecting our confidentiality. It aims at protecting our integrity and authenticity of data through various methods such as encryption, which I mentioned, through marks, through digital signatures, and through digital certificates. So now we've been talking about some concepts. Let's try to understand some of those basic concepts that we've been using in cryptography. As we started the class, we've talked about some concepts that you may be wondering. We have concepts like plain text. You've heard that multiple times. We have encryption, decryption. We have ciphertext and so on. What is plain text? Plain text just refers to the original message that we want to protect. And what are those messages? It could be something like your password. You could be trying to protect your credit card number, or you could be trying to protect your social security number and so on. So what is encryption, decryption? Encryption is the process of converting plain text into a secret scrambled form that can only be understood by those with the proper decryption key. So in other words, encrypting a plain text is like the process of converting it into an unreadable form called a ciphertext. And this ensures that if the ciphertext happens to fall into the wrong hands, the original message will remain protected because that message has been encrypted. Let's talk about decryption. When we talk about decryption, we think of the ciphertext because the text something can only be decrypted after it has been encrypted. So what does decrypting a ciphertext mean? It's the process of converting it back into a plain text, which can only be done with the correct key. So that leads us to a key. For you to be able to decrypt a text, you need to make use of a key. So what is a key? So when we talk about a key, it has to do with crypto variable as well. So what is that key? It is a piece of information that is used to encrypt and to decrypt data. So with a key, we have a crypto variable as well. And what is that crypto variable? It is that variable that is used to describe the key that change with each use. The variable changes with each use. That is a crypto variable. And you know, the strength of a cryptographic key is measured in its bit size and key space. That leads us to bit size and key space. What is a bit size? Anyway, before I go to a bit size, I know someone may be wondering, like, what is a bit? A bit refers to like a smallest unit of digital information used in computing and telecommunication. That is a bit. And what is a bit size? Bit size refers to the number of bits in a key, while key space then refers to the total number of possible keys that can be generated. And you know, the larger the bit size and key space, the stronger the key and the more secure the encryption. Then another concept that we'll be talking of is Kirchhoff's principle. Sorry, yeah, Kirchhoff's principle. So what does this principle talk about? It states that the security of a crypto system should depend only on the secrecy of a key and not on the secrecy of the algorithm. What does this mean? This therefore means that a crypto system should be secure even if an attacker knows how the algorithm works, as long as the attacker does not know the key. And this goes to like tell us that with Kirchhoff's principle, an attacker shouldn't be able to get access to an encrypted system just because they know how the algorithm works, because we definitely know how the algorithm works. And if we don't have the key, we shouldn't be able to use that public knowledge of how the algorithm works to be able to get into a system. So we're going to continue with our cryptographic concepts. And here we have cryptography, we have cryptanalysis, we have cryptology, we have crypto system. Cryptography, again, is a part of a larger field called cryptology, which includes like both that cryptography and cryptoanalysis. So cryptography involves creating codes and ciphers to protect information, while cryptoanalysis involves breaking those codes and ciphers to gain unauthorized access to information. One of the most widely used cryptographic standards is the FIPS of 140-2, which is like a US government standard that specifies the security requirements for cryptographic models used to protect sensitive data. This standard sets forth like requirements for the design, the implementation, and the testing of cryptographic models. And it's widely used and adopted both by the government as well as private sectors. So here we go. Let's talk about the historical milestones in cryptography. Cryptography has gone a long way. It's not just something that started today. You're going to be seeing the Caesar cipher. You're going to be seeing substitution, which is like a form of the Caesar cipher. You're going to be seeing the rod. We have rod 3, we have rod 13, and so on, which is rotation. We're going to be seeing how cryptography was made use of in the American Civil War. And they made use of substitution and transposition. We're going to be seeing flag signals, Ultra, Enigma, which has a similar machine like the popular machine. So cryptography has a very rich and fascinating past and extends like over thousands of years and has been employed by a diverse range of groups, from like ancient civilizations to contemporary organizations, as well as industries. And the evolution of cryptography is closely linked with human history. That's very interesting. You know, encrypted messages have played a very pivotal role in numerous significant events throughout history, the same as human history evolves. That's how cryptography is evolving. So as we study like the milestones in cryptography, we'll discover how various techniques have been developed and refined over time to be able to protect information from unauthorized access, and how cryptography has contributed to shaping the course of human events. So now we'll take a look at some of those key milestones in the development of cryptography, the first of which is the Caesar cipher. So what is this Caesar cipher? Caesar cipher is a technique that was named after the famous Roman Emperor Julius Caesar, who used the cipher to encode his private messages. But the Caesar cipher is not just limited to the ancient Rome. It's actually one of the earliest non-encryption techniques used throughout history. So the Caesar cipher involves like replacing each letter in a plain text with a letter, a fixed number of positions down the alphabet. So we're gonna see how this works. Sorry, I have to be going back and forth with the slide so you can see. So what did I say? I said the Caesar cipher involves replacing each letter in a plain text with a letter, a fixed number of positions down the alphabet. So before we go to the demonstration, don't pay too much attention on this. Go back a little bit. So as I said, we have substitution cipher under the Caesar cipher. So the first well-known cipher, that's the substitution cipher, was used back then by Julius Caesar, as we mentioned, around sometime, anyway, it's not important, around maybe like 58 BC. It is now referred to as Caesar cipher. It was called the substitution cipher, but it's now referred to as the Caesar cipher. So what did Caesar do? Caesar shifted each letter in his military command in order to make them appear meaningless in case the enemy intercepted them. Let's go back to the slide. Sorry. Okay, so as I was saying, Caesar made use of this by like shifting each letter in his military command in order to make it appear like meaningless in case like someone else or an enemy kind of intercepted them. Let's try to go deep on this, like how he made use of this. So let's imagine, according to, he was shifting like an alphabet a number of times, like it's something that was predetermined, like how he wants to do it. Let's imagine like John decided to communicate with maybe Anne using like the Caesar cipher. They will need to agree like in advance on the shift they are going to use. Let's say we are using 3 here. So to encrypt his message, John needs to apply a shift of 3 to each letter in the message. How does that work? If you apply a shift of 3 to each letter, what happens? If you apply a shift of 3 to A, count from here, we have 1, 2, 3. A becomes D. And if you apply a shift of 3 to B, B becomes E, C becomes F, and so on. So now he has encrypted the message by applying a shift of 3. That is something that John and Anne have like predetermined, that they are using a shift of 3 in their encryption. So now the text becomes like unreadable when John is sending the message, and it can be sent openly. So when Anne goes ahead and like receives the message, what she'll do would just be to subtract a shift of 3 from each letter. So once he subtracts a shift of 3 to each letter, it now makes sense to her, but that's something. There is something secret, there is a key. And what is that key that they used? They used a shift of 3 as their key. It's kind of like basic encryption that was used by military leaders like hundreds of years ago, but it's something that is still being used. So there's something that we're gonna do. I ask you to put your books and your pens together. Let's do this together. So I have something here, a scrambled form of something. This is the communication between John and Anne, or whoever, maybe Patu and Kinesia, they are communicating. They just want to make sure that we, the class, don't know what they are talking about. They have decided that they are going to be using a shift of 3 in their communication. Then Patu goes ahead and sends a message to Kinesia. This is how the message appears to Kinesia. This is just a message. We don't even know what they are talking about, though their key, which is a shift of 3, it's kind of confidential. We don't know it. So now how does Akanisia go ahead to check that message? She's going to be applying a shift of 3 to all what we have on the board to be able to read the message that her friend Patu sent to her. So let's go ahead and do this as fast as we can. We are applying a shift of 3 to this message to be able to decrypt and know their secret. Let's decrypt and know what they are talking about. I'm looking for the response in the chat as soon as possible. Put down your alphabet as soon as you can. Then use a shift of 3. Let's decrypt this message and know how the Caesar cipher works and know how that substitution works. Let's go. You have a couple of minutes to do that. Are we together?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. I'm waiting for that. First person will surely go home with something. Let's see who is gonna have that secret to decrypt this message and see what it says. And while you're doing that, if you have a question, just put it down. You have about, let's give you like two minutes. I know that's a lot, but just go ahead and do it.
Mr. Elsie, please can you repeat the explanation again?
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
So what I said is, we are using a shift of 3. If we decide on using a shift of 3 in the alphabet to communicate, what happens? This is our A here. If we use a shift of 3, A becomes D. Just go ahead and count 1, 2, 3. A becomes D. If we apply a shift of 3 to B, just go ahead, you have 1, 2, 3. B becomes E, and so on. So you just apply a shift of 3. Is that understood now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so just use that key 3, a shift of 3, to be able to decrypt this message that we have on the screen.
Okay.
Once the first person is done, we're gonna like move on.
Miss Elsie, please, can I ask a question? Are we using the letters at the top, or we are using the alphabets? Are we using the PH, HW, or we are using the ABC to F to decrypt?
Okay, let me put it right. This is an encrypt. Imagine you're communicating with your friend.
Yes.
And you decide with your friend that you're using a shift of 3 in the alphabet. Okay. Then you send this message to your friend, an encrypted message like this to your friend. What's your friend going to do? Your friend is going to be subtracting that shift of 3 to be able to get your original message. So this one is now like the cipher message, the cipher text. It's already encrypted. You're trying to convert it into a plain text.
Okay.
Is it understood now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Guys, do you have the message down? I want to stop sharing for a bit and see if I can get the whiteboard up for us to do it together as you're done. You can take a picture of it or something, like just take a picture of the message you're decrypting. So I tried to get the board up so we can do it together.
Please share your screen. Let's let's take the picture.
Okay.
Maybe.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe everyone have it now.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
This is the primary. Meet me at elephant day.
I think someone has it already, so. Who is struggling with it?
I am struggling with it.
I think, how many people have it? Let me see, not Neb. Anthony, you have it? Feli, you didn't get it right. Okay, can we go ahead? Maybe you can stop where you are. Let's go ahead. And kudos to the people that had it right. Are we together?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. So here is a message. This is a message that you received from your friend, and you had agreed with your friend that you're going to be using a shift of 3. So let's use that shift of 3. Now we are subtracting. You're at the receiving end, you already know the key, and the key is 3. You are subtracting a shift of 3 from every letter to be able to get like what the plain text, that's the original message is. This is how the message comes, PHHW. It looks like it's something that doesn't make sense to anyone that doesn't know that there is a key that they are using. So we have our P. Let's subtract, let me see. Let's subtract 3 from P. That will be 1, 2, 3. It leads us to M. Do I have this? It leads us to M. Let's go to the edge and subtract a shift of 3. Here is our edge here. We have our edge here. If we have to subtract 3 from there, it will give us an E. I hope you can follow up with me. We have 1, 2, 3. It gives you E. And the next one edge gives you E. Let's go to our W. You subtract 3 from there, it will give you a T. Let's respect the space. Then we have a P. One, two. Sorry. Let me see what this person had before I continue.
Give you M. T. 1, 2. Give you M.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure the person had it correctly. When we subtract from P, it gives you M. You subtract from H, it gives you E. Then we have D.
Give you A.
Then W.
T.
Then here we go. We have our H here. You
E.
subtract. O.
L. L.
Then we have our H again. It gives you E. We have S. It gives you P. Then we have K.
You give us H.
Then we have D.
You give us A.
Then Q.
Give us N.
And then W gives us a T. And then we have the O. L.
Give us
We have
L.
T. A. We have
A.
N. Give us
K.
K. And then we have H. When we subtract the H, it gives us P.
Wow.
So here is the message that you were trying to send to your friend. And since you decided that you're using a shift of 3, instead of just like putting in an envelope and writing there, meet me at Elephant Lake, you decide to put something scrambled that someone will not understand. You can even send it in an open envelope because the key is secret. The person that is going to deliver that message does not have the key. It's difficult for the person to know what that means. So this is how the Caesar cipher was used. Do we have any question here?
Not at all.
Yes, I do have a question. How will you send the message to the shift to the key? The key is the shift of 3, right?
Yeah.
How will you send this? How will you send this key to your recipient or the person you want to, the intended recipient? How will you send this key to the person?
Okay, yeah. So if you followed up well, I did mention that we are talking about the historical milestones in cryptography, and this is how they used it in those days. As I mentioned, I talked about maybe John and Anne communicating, and before then, they have to predetermine what they are going to use. That is their secret. They have determined that they are going to be using a shift of 3 in their communication.
Okay.
So that shift of 3 is something, it's the key that is just between those two people, the sender and the recipient. Is that understood now?
It's understood. So it means
Because,
like if you want to like do it in our own day to day, like you first of all send an maybe like email. How can it not be also intercepted?
that's why we said historical milestones in those days. Imagine I met you and we're talking and I'll be like, oh, you know, we're gonna be communicating with a shift of 3.
Oh.
For example, I talk to you, hey, we're gonna be communicating with a shift of 3. So what happens is that whenever you receive a message from me, you're gonna know that, hey, there is a shift of 3. So I have to subtract 3 to be able to get the right message, to be able to decipher that message and get the plain text in the message.
A quick one. So I guess if they have to communicate the shift of 3, it has to be one-on-one, because if it's transmitted the same way, it can be intercepted.
No, not in those days, because this is not what we are using nowadays. You guys have to understand, we're talking about the historical milestones. We're going to see how this has evolved with time. That was just a way that Caesar used in his military commands. You know, all his people already knew that, hey, we are using a shift of 3, which is an example. So they are the ones that are aware of the shift that they are using. So when they receive the message, it doesn't come with the key. The key is a secret that only them know. So they just go ahead and apply it. The message does not come with the key, but the key is something that they are already aware of.
Okay.
Does that make sense now?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Can you all see the presentation now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so let's move ahead. Still talking about the Caesar shift. Let's see. Yeah, we mentioned that the Caesar cipher made use of substitution. They made use of rod, which is rotation. We have seen how it works because in encryption, when they apply a shift of 3, A becomes D. We have our A becomes D, B becomes E, C becomes F, and so on. So in decryption, they just put a shift of 3. They subtract 3 because we had decided that we're going to be using a shift of 3. When you decrypt the message, you just go ahead and you subtract 3 to have that original message in plain text. Then here, it's still like another way. As I said before, they decided to use like a shift of 3. Let's look at this. This is our alphabet. This is the alphabet below with a shift of 3. Just imagine we have shifted the whole alphabet. It's not like we were shifting the letters with a 3. We have shifted the whole alphabet here. So let's see what's going to happen here. If we have cat, for example, the plain text is cat. What is a cipher text going to be? Where is our C? Our C becomes Z. We made a shift of 3 in the entire alphabet. So this is where we have our A now. This is our cipher alphabet. We have our original alphabet, and this is our cipher alphabet with a shift of 3. So we shifted this way, and that is why X, Y, and Z has to come ahead. So what happens? You have something like cat. Cat will come like in a cipher text, it will come as ZXQ. And what is that? What is our C? Our C becomes Z. Then our
A.
Then our A becomes X and our T becomes Q. So that's how we get the ZXQ for cat. The same. Here we decide that our cipher alphabet is going to be a reverse alphabet. It's things that they were deciding, like a shift of 3 in the alphabet, like a shift of 3 in each letter was what they decided in the example that we had before. But here we are having the cipher alphabet is by a shift of 3 in the entire alphabet. So we have original plain and then we have the cipher. Then when we go to the next one, they may decide to reverse that their cipher alphabet is going to be a reverse. So they go ahead and reverse the entire, instead of A, B, C, they have Z, Y, X, and so on. So this is our cipher. cipher. So if you receive a cipher, you have to relate it to the original. You already know that the cipher is the reverse of the alphabet. So in this case, the same card becomes XZG. Instead of here, we had ZXQ because it was a shift of 3, but here we have a reverse alphabet as our cipher alphabet. Is that understood?
No.
So, Patu, are you the one talking?
No one. I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, okay, so remember the example we had before?
Yeah.
Because here, they were using a shift, like they pre-decide what kind of shift they are going to use. Here, they said they are using a shift of 3 in each alphabet.
Yes.
Here, their cipher text was gotten by using a shift of 3 in each alphabet. That's why here we're taking it as an individual thing. A becomes D.
Backward shift.
Right. So A becomes D. But when we go forward, they now decide that they want to shift the entire alphabet by 3. So imagine that if you shift your entire alphabet by 3, it means that where A starts, to get a cipher alphabet, instead of A starting from here, it has to go further by 3. And if you have to write A, B, C to Z, it's gonna end somewhere on the way. It ends in W.
Right.
Because imagine that we have drawn like the rows and columns and we're trying to write A, B, C to Z. Let me get back to the...
Do you want to use a whiteboard? So
yeah, I'm going back to it. Can you guys see the board?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, so imagine we have our alphabet here. That's A, B, C to Z. In this case, we didn't say that we should, because in this message that you sent here, you wanted to use a shift of 3 in each letter of the alphabet.
Right.
That's why A becomes D, B becomes E, C becomes F, because you're using a shift of 3 in each alphabet. Then now imagine that we decide to communicate by shifting the entire alphabet by 3 to get a cipher alphabet that we can use to decrypt. So what's going to happen? So here, it means if you had like drawn some rows and columns, it means that A is gonna shift like 3 letters. So it's gonna be ending somewhere in W because there was a shift ahead of 3. It's gonna end somewhere here in W. Then you have your X, Y, and Z to start. So X, Y, and Z now comes ahead.
Okay.
So your X, Y, and Z is what is supposed to come ahead if you decide to use a shift of 3. So in this case, sorry. So in this case here, we are not doing an individual shift. We have shifted the whole alphabet. This is our ABC. Then here we decide to shift our A by 3 to get the cipher alphabet. Then understand that if we shift our A by 3, we have A, B, C, D, E. And at the end, instead of ending in W, since we shifted, we're going to end in, instead of ending in Z, we're going to end in W. Why? Because we shifted 3 letters ahead. So it means that the X, Y, and Z, it means that our X, Y, and Z is no longer included. That's why we bring it ahead here. So our alphabet now starts from X, Y, Z, A, B, C.
Oh, okay, Miss Elsie, can I say what I understood?
Yes, please.
Okay, it means your A begins from D, right?
Right.
Okay. So, and then where does the last 3 come, the X, Y, and Z? Why is it?
Okay, let's start counting. We have our direct alphabet here, A, B, C, D, E, right to Z. right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, now we are trying to get our cipher alphabet. Let's make a shift of 3 to A, because once you make a shift of 3 to A, what happens? It's going to shift every other letter. So now if we shift by 3, it means this space, there will be nothing here.
Yes.
There'll be nothing here, there'll be nothing here. Then
Yes.
A starts from here.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. We have A, B, C, D, E, F, right up to W, because if you go chronologically, you have
Yes.
J here, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, it ends in W. And we still have our X, Y, and Z left because we had a shift of 3, right?
Okay.
So where
Right.
it ends, we continue from here, X, Y, Z. That is the shift that brought the X, Y, and Z in front.
X
Okay.
now represents A in this shift.
Sorry, someone is speaking, but I can't hear the person well.
It's me, it's Oyaje, Elsie. Sorry, I said, does X, after you made the whole shift, does X now represent A and
Right.
Y represent B and Z?
Exactly.
represent C?
So this is our matching. This is our secret, which is our cipher alphabet. We are the only ones that know that our X now stands for A, Y stands for B to decrypt, and Z stands for C.
Right.
Does that make sense now?
Yes, ma'am.
So now here we have a shift of 3 in the entire alphabet. Let's go further. We could also decide to reverse the entire alphabet. This is just one way. We could decide to have like a shift of 4. If we have a shift of 4, what happens? Instead of A being
Becoming-
at Z, A becomes E. So you know that instead of ending at W, you're gonna end at V, and then W, X, Y, and Z comes here, meaning that your A becomes W.
Right.
So you can like practice any other shift. You can do 5, 6, you get a new
Yeah.
like cipher
Yeah,
alphabet.
so so this is not standard. This is not standard. So it all depends on you, the two individuals who want to communicate, or the group that want to communicate. They decide on which standard they want to go with. So like say our class here, we can say, oh, if we want to communicate, we're going to use maybe a reverse an alphabet, a reverse alphabet, to be able to encrypt the message we communicate in class. So that is the standard for our group. So every group can choose their own standard. Just to add more to that, I think well, you're going to see again. It's important for you to understand this, but for sure, very few they won't ask you this in an interview. It was hard to see this in an interview. But again, it's good to know the history, how that's why we're trying to make people understand how cryptography has evolved over time. So I saw Dandy was asking if that you should give more explanation on the reverse alphabet.
Okay, so talking about the reverse alphabet, as we said, it's something that we decide. We just decide that, oh, let our cipher alphabet be a reverse. So what happens? It means that here, the Z becomes A, like our reverse alphabet is just like writing your alphabet starting from Z instead of starting from A. So if I could like want to send a message like cat, I'm trying to like encrypt that message using that our reverse alphabet, which is our key. Our key is reverse alphabet. So we have C. What is our C? Our C here in the reverse alphabet is our X. And then what is our A? Our A in our reverse alphabet is Z. And what is our T? Our T in our reverse alphabet is G, and so on. So they were just like deciding what to use. When we go, you need to understand the basics so that when we go ahead and we start using the key, a key here is something that you know here they decide on the shift of 3. The other way they decide to reverse the alphabet, and a shift of 3 here is with the entire alphabet. They decide a shift of 3 to each letter of the alphabet. Here they decide that their cipher alphabet is by using like a reverse alphabet.
Right.
Yeah, I think that is clear.
Next.
So you want to have the presentation and the video again to go through that. So
Then
just in case.
also, yeah, with the Caesar cipher, they also made use of the rod. And I said, for example, rod 13, you can have rod 3. What is rod? Rod is like rotation. And it is that kind of cipher that has a variation of 13. Like the 13, the letter rotates by 13. That's why they call it a rotation, rod 13. Because just for example, to throw more light, to throw more light here, if we are using rod 13, which is just rotation, which is just rotation. So what happens, imagine we had a message, you're trying to use the rod 13, which is rotation, to send a message to someone like hello world. We are just gonna be rotating each letter 13 times. And if we go to our edge, I'll just go with H and E. You can do the others when you're studying to understand, like if you really want to. So we have like our edge here. Imagine you're rotating edge 13 times. You just go ahead and count. From here, you have edge, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and you have 13. 13 ends you at U. So our edge becomes U. That's where you get the U from. Our E here, you do the same count. If you count to 13, it brings you back here to R. Our L, if you go to L and you count 13, it takes you to Y and so on. So this is just how the rotation was used. Understood?
Yes, this is time consuming.
I have a question, Elsie.
Go ahead.
Please, why is this called rotation and the other one referred to as shifting? Is it like the method, what you did is the same, right? Like when
Yeah, it's the same.
Like, sorry?
Wait, let me go back to the slides.
Oh, goodness, people had time.
So actually, we're talking about evolution in cryptography. So those like people in those days also made use of that rotation, as they call it, rotation. They just go ahead and rotate it 13 times. It's not a rotation as you can think of something going round. It's just like big. And why do they call it rotation? One reason why they call it rotation is because if you count, okay, sorry, let me go back. Because what happens is, if you go, let's say, we have W here. If you get to W, you're trying to get the 13. What happens? You have to keep going 1, 2, 3. And where Z ends, you come back and start from A.
Yeah.
You rotate it. You come back and you start from A. It continues. Because if you have to say W, X, Y, Z, it's not going to give you the 13 if you're using 13 rotation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
These are just the basics. We haven't really gotten to like the main thing in cryptography. Then also we talked about the American Civil War, making use of substitution and transposition. I'll give this to you as an assignment so you do it home so we don't have to take too much time. So when we talk about substitution and transposition, we made use of substitution where we decided that, oh, we are going to be using like a 3 shift, we're going to use to reverse the alphabet and so on. So what happened is they were trying to make it complicated without using just substitution alone. So they added something called transposition. to be able to create like a more complex cipher, which is harder to break. So what happened? The transposition cipher kind of hides the message by rearranging the order of the letters or symbols just to make it more complex. You know, unlike the substitution cipher, the letters or symbols are not replaced when it comes to transposition. They just kind of shuffle them around, but they know how they are doing it. They kind of go ahead and shuffle, but they don't change the letters, because for substitution they change, but transposition they don't change. So when they substitute and then they use transposition, it changes the whole thing. It makes it like really difficult to be able to get what is going on there. So here, I put an example here. Let's imagine we have hello world. For example, we're using a shift of 3. After we use a shift of 3, just to practice the substitution and transposition, after we use a shift of 3, we are going ahead to use a 2-column transposition. So when I talk about 2-column transposition, I will demonstrate it a little bit so you can be able to do that. Like you use hello world, you use a shift of 3, and then you follow by a 2-column transposition. When you follow 2-column transposition, it becomes really difficult for you to know what the plain text is, unless you know that they use a shift of 3 and they use a 2-column transposition. Then we are also gonna be demonstrating like how we can use a key. In this case, we are using a key. And what is that key? Our key is 4, 8, 15, 16, 23. We are using the key in this text now is, for example, to be able to get a ciphertext that you can send with this using a key. It's something that you just determine. You could use a different key, but here we are using 4, 8, 15, 16, 23. And here it's gonna be a rotation. So let me try to get the, and also before I go to the board, they also made use of flag signals. And what are flag signals? They are just ways that they use to communicate and send message like during their times of war and so on. So different flag patterns could represent like letters or words, and the patterns could combine to create like a secret code that only them know. And this allowed like messages to be sent maybe quickly and discreetly without the need for electronic devices. So I'm gonna get on the board and let's try to do this. So you can take down the question so you understand what's going on. Okay, so here we're trying to use hello world with a shift of 3 followed by 2-column transposition. Can someone quickly get hello world with a shift of 3 and put it on the chart? Are we working on that? Mildred, I can see that we're going to be stopping in a few minutes. I just want to throw more light on this so you can do it prior to the tomorrow's class. Because if I leave it this way, you're not going to understand what is happening. This is not really the complex part of cryptography. It's just like the beginning. So let's just try and get used to it.
Excuse me, Elsie.
Yes, please.
Yes, when you said it's followed by two-column transposition, I don't understand that.
Yeah, that's why I want someone to like quickly use a shift of 3 and get the hello world ciphertext. Then I follow with the 2-column transposition. But without that, we already know how to use the shift of 3 to get a ciphertext of hello world, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's just assume that after getting the hello world ciphertext with a shift of 3, we had, imagine that hello world is a ciphertext. It's an imagination. Then now we are going to make it more complex by using 2-column transposition. How are we going to do that? They said 2 columns, as easy as it is. Here is the hello world, which is our imaginary ciphertext. So I'm going to create 2 columns out of this hello world. I have the HE, I have LL, I have OW, I have OR, and then I have LD. Now I've done all this. So what becomes our ciphertext? Our ciphertext now becomes, we are reading from here down. So our ciphertext now becomes H. Sorry, my computer is not very friendly to this board, so just pardon me the way it is. With the next class, we're gonna like do it better. So here, our ciphertext now becomes, because we had hello world well spelled, now we're trying to get a ciphertext out of it, and we're using 2-column transposition. So what are we doing? We have the HELLOW in order. Now we are going to scramble it. Now we have the HLOO. I'm reading downwards. Then L, then we go back to the top, E, L, W, R, and D. So this is what our hello world becomes when you use a 2-column transposition. So what happens? I just separated hello world into 2 columns in order, HELLOOR. ORLD. I separated it into 2 columns and I read it in order to be able to get the ciphertext. This is what the 2-column transposition does. So what you're gonna go ahead and do is, first step, get a ciphertext out of this hello world by using a shift, like a 3-letter shift. So your H, as we have H here, you use 3 shifts to have your K. You use a 3 shifts in E to have your H, and so on. Once you get the 3 shifts, go ahead and apply the 2-column transposition. Is it understood?
Yeah, actually, maybe when
Are
they
we
see
adding or
those,
subtracting?
I actually, maybe if they see HE, they're thinking is 1 column. So I don't know if you want to separate the HE to make it 2 column. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is just how it is. As I said, my computer is not too friendly with the whiteboard. So I'm making 2 out of it and I'm reading downwards. This is our hello well spelled. So I just make a column with HE. We have HE, a 2 column. If I were to make 3 columns, for example, I'll have HE L. Then I'll continue with LLO. With LOW. That will be the next column. But here I'm using 2 columns. Does it sound a bit better?
Yes.
So I repeat, just go ahead and get like a ciphertext from your Hello World. Then you use with 3 letter shift in each letter. Then you follow by a 2 column transposition and give me what you have at the end of the day. Then I'll just round up with this since we already have it on the board. Then for the text now is, if we're using the key 4, 8, 15, 16, 24, it's as simple as this is our key that we decided we're gonna use it with this now is. Let's go to our n. What happens to n? Because we have now is, and our key here is 4, 8, 15, 16, and 23. So this is our key 4, 8, 15, 16, 23. We have our plain text, we have our key, and we are trying to get a ciphertext out of it. So what happens? We get n. Our key to get a cipher for n is 4. You just go ahead and count 4. We have n here. We have OP 1, 2, 3, 4. So our cipher becomes R. And then we have O. Our key is 8. We go ahead and we count 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have a W. And so on. Our W here is 15. You go ahead and you count. We are rotating. Once you count 1, 2, 3, we're supposed to count 15. You continue 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 till you get to 15. That's how you use the cipher. That's how you can use this key to be able to create a ciphertext from now is or any other thing, depending on the particular key that you're using. If you have any question, just go ahead and ask before we end the class. I know we've gone above 30 minutes. Any question?
Yeah, please, can you repeat the last stuff? The last one you did, please, can you repeat it again?
Okay, so what I said is, this is just an imaginary text nowadays. We are trying to use a key, and our key is 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, right?
Okay.
To be able to get a ciphertext, our plain text is nowadays, we're trying to use the key 4, 8, 15, 16, 23 to be able to get a ciphertext. So what are we doing? The key matches the number of letters in nowadays. 4 is the key for n. What do we do with n? We are using a shift of 3. So this is just making it a little bit complex, not like here that we're using a shift of 3 for the entire text, but here you have different keys for each letter.
Okay.
Is that understood better now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for the 4, okay, 4 matches with n. So you have to find the 3 keys after the n, right?
Right.
Not the 3 keys, the 4.
So,
It have to be 4. So you're counting from n. From n, you're counting 4 times. O, E, U, R. So R becomes the ciphertext.
do you understand better? Who asked the question? Is it Danny?
It's me, it's Dandy, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as Prof is saying, the difference between having this key is with the 3 shifts, it applies to the entire text, like each letter has to shift 3 times. But for this one that we have a key, each letter has its own key that has to be shifted, but you don't shift it like the same as in the other one. So this one just goes ahead to make it a little bit complex.
Okay.
Yeah, so W is going to be 15 times. You're going to count 15 times. And like she said, it rotates. If you end at Z, you have to begin with A.
Okay.
Because it's rotating. Did you guys take down the homework, like just for your little practice, because you're not gonna have the recording today?
Yeah.
Miss Elsie, please, can you explain the 3 shifts followed by 2 column again, please, if you don't mind?
Okay, so what I meant is we have done the 3 shift, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the first thing you're gonna do is use your 3 shifts in Hello World, right?
Yes.
When you use 3 shifts in Hello World, what does your edge become? You get to edge, you count 1, 2, 3. Your edge becomes a K, right? Then your E, you use a 3 shift, 1, 2, 3. Your E becomes H. And then the same for your L. You get on your L, you have 1, 2, 3. Your L becomes O, L becomes O, and then your O becomes R, and so on. This is what your halo becomes, right?
Right.
Then the world becomes, let me say X, 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 for example. Now you've used the first step, which is a 3 shift, and you're trying to use the second step, which is a 2 column transposition. As I said, for 2 column, it just like scrambles like the whole thing, but it doesn't change it. So now we already have our this. Maybe someone can easily guess what is going on there. But now we use like the 2 column transposition. It's gonna make it a little bit complex. And here, as I explained before, for the 2 column transposition, we are just trying to like create 2 columns out of this, then get a different ciphertext. This is our Hello World that we've already used the 3 shift to it. Let's get 2 columns out of it. It's gonna be K, H, then you have O, O, and then you have R, X in order, and then you have X, X, and so on. So at the end, after getting your 2 columns with the entire text that you got, go ahead and write out a ciphertext out of it. We had our KH, now we are not reading, this way we are going down. So our new ciphertext now starts with K, O, R, and so on. Does that make sense now?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Miss Elsie,
Excuse me.
I realize you're counting the first time you counted from, you were subtracting, and then now I realize you're adding.
Okay, so that's what this is meant for you all to understand the difference between encryption and decryption. With encryption, we were adding, and with decryption, we were subtracting.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense now?
It does.
Yeah,
So
so
if
when
you're trying to create a ciphertext, you add. When you're trying to decrypt from a ciphertext to a plain text back to a plain text, you are counting backward, not forward.
So say that again, please.
So when you want to create like encrypting, you're trying to create a ciphertext. This is what like what she's doing now, a ciphertext. You are moving forward. You're counting forward, going forward. And if you want to decrypt, like moving from a ciphertext to a plain text into a more readable format that can be well understood, maybe understood by any person, you are moving backward and not forward.
Okay.
So for example, this example that you did, I did not give you a plain text. I gave you a text that was already encrypted. It's already in the cipher form. So you're trying to